Again, a very warm welcome and thank you everybody for joining us today in this very important deliberation. This event we are organizing, it's an affiliate event that we are organizing during Climate Week NYC 2021. Climate Week, as you might be aware, is an annual flagship event of the Climate Group. And today we are going to deliberate or witness leading actions that the national government, that the state governments in India, as well as we'll be hearing from a very important funder from India, that all these important stakeholders are taking to build a more resilient India, as well as supporting the transition to a low carbon economy growth in India, a transition that is just, equitable, that benefits all, as well as it's sustainable. So without taking much time, I would just like to quickly invite Divya Sharma, I'm very sorry. Divya Sharma is our Executive Director of India Climate Group, and she would like to welcome you all and provide the welcome remarks, as well as she will touch upon the brief context about why we have all gathered here today for this important event. Divya, over to you.
Thank you, Rana. Good evening and welcome to today's event on Action Towards India's Low Carbon Future. We are extremely happy to host this event along with climate trends in the ages of Climate Week NYC this year. 2021 is a critical year for more than one reason. The year saw severe climate events across the world, including India, which witnessed two back-to-back tropical cyclones hitting the west and east coast, glacial lake outburst, several floods and forest fires, along with enduring the repeated waves of COVID-19. 2021 is also crucial for the global climate community, wherein nations are expected to come together with new or enhanced pledges under the Paris Agreement during COP26. Climate Group States' work is centered around three key pillars: developing low carbon development pathways, strengthening policy action, and data-driven transparency of climate actions. In India, we are supporting state climate strategies, engaging with states on peer-to-peer learning and capacity building, and profiling state climate leadership on a global stage. Needless to say that at Climate Group, we are committed to accelerate climate action, and our work becomes all the more important in the light of the urgency depicted by the recent report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. Climate Week, our annual flagship event, gives us the right momentum and voice needed at this critical hour. It's a powerful platform that focuses on the power, flexibility, and speed for governments and businesses to deal with global crises we are facing today. With a call to getting it done in its 13th year, Climate Week NYC is the largest climate week on Earth, hosted annually by us, Climate Group, in conjunction with the UN Global General Assembly. India as a country has a great role to play in climate action, and our states and subnational governments come with huge potential to be an active part of this change towards climate resilient and sustainable future. In this light, we have convened today's discourse to hear voices from multiple stakeholders, national governments, states, and funding agencies on their climate ambition to support achieve a low carbon and resilient future for India. Today's event aims to showcase some of the ambitious and tailored actions that Indian government agencies are taking in the fight against climate change. We see these actions as powerful levers to ensure global temperature rise to be well below 2 degrees centigrade, with efforts to reach 1.5 degrees centigrade. These actions are also critical in helping India go beyond its commitment under the Paris Agreement. I take this opportunity to welcome all the participants who have joined us today. We are extremely delighted to have Shri Sudhendu J. Sinha, Advisor Infrastructure Connectivity, Transport and Electric Mobility, Niti Aayog, and keen to hear from him. Welcome, Mr. Sinha. We have great panel here with representation from Ladakh, Bihar, and Gujarat, where Mr. Ravindra Kumar, Secretary, Power Development Department, Ladakh, will speak about Ladakh's carbon neutral vision. Mr. Deepak Kumar Singh, Principal Secretary, Department of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Bihar, will speak about Government of Bihar's Climate Resilience and Low Carbon Pathway Program, and Mr. Akhilesh Magai, Head Renewable Advisory, Gujarat Energy Research and Management Institute, will speak about operationalizing Gujarat's no new coal announcement. Welcome to all our distinguished panelists, and thank you for making time to be with us today. We have Ms. Aarti Khosla, founder and director, Climate Trends, who has kindly agreed to moderate this session for us today. Welcome, Aarti. We also have the pleasure of having Ms. Matushi Sengupta, Director, India Office, MacArthur Foundation, who will reflect upon scaling up subnational climate action in India. MacArthur has supported our work with subnational governments in India, and with their support, we have been able to realize our vision and strategy on Indian climate action. Welcome, Matushi. Climate Group India's team with subnational governments is led by Rana Pujari, my colleague, who will conduct today's program and also has been behind curating this event. Welcome, Rana, and all the best for great discussions today. I will now hand over to you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Divya. Thank you. Thank you for the welcome remarks. Again, a very warm welcome to everybody who has just joined us. Without taking more time, I just wanted to check with my colleague Zainab. Has Mr. Sinha joined us? Has he been able to join us today?
Not yet, Rana.
Not yet. Okay. No problem. We'll have his session maybe after this. I would just like to invite then Aarti Khosla. Aarti will have a very interesting discussion with our representatives from Indian states. Akhilesh Magal has joined us, as Divya mentioned. He has joined us from Gujarat, Germany, and we'll also have the pleasure of having the Principal Secretary of the Department of Environment and Forest, Bihar, and also the Principal Secretary of the Power Development Department, Union Territory of Ladakh with us. So Aarti Khosla, over to you. Aarti, as you might all are aware, she's the founder and director of GSCC. And over to you, Aarti. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Rana, and good afternoon, everybody. In the end, it turns out a chat between friends, and we hope this one is also like that. Thanks, Divya, for also giving an overview. It's a very interesting moment, as we've been seeing. General Assembly conversations are a lot on climate change, but it's next to next with the agendas on defense and security. So the conversations have indeed lifted up. Yesterday, the state of Maharashtra announced that they will make plans to have economy-wide net zero emissions by mid-century for 43 cities in the state, and that makes up for about 50 to 60 million people altogether. I think the point that I'm trying to make is that ahead of the crucial 26th session of the Conference of Parties, which will be held after a gap year due to COVID, there is a lot of buzz and momentum on not just climate action, but also getting it right, especially as a lot of developing countries try and figure out what climate action is like. And to that extent, it's quite clear and evident that for countries like India, the discussions on what burning of coal for electricity generation would mean have become quite significant. Globally, burning of coal for electricity generation might account for roughly a third of the carbon emissions, and to that extent, it has also been quite central and fundamental in the international climate movement, and which is why we witness all of these compacts and movements which talk about no further coal development, retiring of existing coal plants, ramping up renewables, and essentially the interface between all of that. Just, to be able to kickstart our conversation, because we have all the people who are working across the states. I think I only wanted to preface with the global scenario, because it's quite clear that especially in a country like India, carbon neutrality will not come only for reasons of climate action alone, and we are all quite aware of it. It will become reasons for development and growth. It will become the mainstay of how India sees its development trajectory, how it sees its investment and finance choices, and how companies and cities basically see their future bets into large sectors of economy and like industry and transport. And it's only then that the discussion about growth and development will fit the energy transition scenarios and not the other way around. And mostly to discuss this, I thought we will use the next 1 hour or so that we have to talk about the silent revolution that's underway, so to speak, especially in states like Gujarat, in Bihar, and in Ladakh, and discuss how all this is aggregating upwards towards a transition that is both desirable as well as necessary. And to do this, I'll keep the format fairly simple. We'll invite our speakers to come and share some of their opening remarks and insights, mostly based on the state of play from their state. And based on that, we'll try and have either an open floor or another round of questions to just take the conversation forward. And to do this, may I first invite Mr. Deepak Kumar Singh, the Principal Secretary, Environment, Forest and Climate Change from Bihar, and as a state has been working quite progressively on climate resilience and low carbon development. And would you be able to share your insights, sir, and then we'll take it on from there.
Aarti just got a message from Mr. Deepak Kumar that he'll be joining
us.
Oh,
I see the message from Zainab that Deepak Kumar hasn't joined yet. No problem. I'll just go with what I see on the screen, and next to me I see Akhilesh. And Akhilesh, can I ask you to talk a little bit about your insights on Gujarat and how it is looking in terms of the energy transition pathway?
Sure, would be happy to do so. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I have a set of few slides. Perhaps Rana, can you please bring this up?
Yeah, sure.
I think that'll be very useful to have some numbers on the board to make things a little more concrete.
Can you see the presentation now, Akhilesh?
I can. I hope everybody else can.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so essentially, a large part of the energy transition in states, especially states like Gujarat, it will really hinge on transforming the power sector. As we know, emissions from coal power plants contribute to the largest emission sector in Gujarat. It is the largest emission sector in Gujarat, and certainly across many other states in the country. So how do we then make this transition? People are talking about it. How do we make this transition? So we teamed up with Climate Trends to really look at this in detail. And I just want to share some of those initial results with you. I want to have a disclaimer here, put in a disclaimer to say that this is not the official, it's not the official position of the state government. Yeah, it's just it's a research from our side. Next, Rana. Okay, so we'll really quickly look at the announcement and to really break down the meaning of no new coal, to see how and why RE, renewable energy, will be a game changer, and then really sum it up, which I think can be very useful for other states as well to chart out their own no new coal. I know I've heard that Chhattisgarh has also announced a very similar statement. Next. So the announcement was made by our CM, our ex-CM, I must say, Mr. Vijay Rupani, that Gujarat will really not issue any new permits for new thermal plants. Now, this has been clubbed under the no new coal announcement by several think tanks and international media agencies. And so this was way back in September 2019. We wanted to then really understand what does this mean? What does it entail, right? So, and can this be done? And would this impact the grid? And what do we need to plan for as a state? And I'll take you through some of these deliberations in this presentation. Next, please. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. Okay. So, what does no new coal mean, right? So, coal essentially in Gujarat, and this is very similar across other states and across the country. You can really break this up into three buckets, so three ways of looking at it. First is the in-state coal power plants owned typically by the government generation company. In Gujarat, it is GSEC, Gujarat State Electricity Corporation. The second bucket is in-state private plants, right? Competitively bid plants, but also government companies like in Gujarat, we have GPCL, and several other smaller, power plants within SEZs and so on. So that's an entire bucket. And then there are the outer state plants, NTPC plants, which are apportioned to Gujarat, that is located outside the state, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and so on. and a portion of that, their generation is coming to Gujarat. So the emissions are happening outside the states, but they're attributable to the consumption within the state. So very interesting way of looking at it. The in-state government plants in Gujarat is about 7,000 megawatt, right? So this is something under our jurisdiction, the state government's jurisdiction, out of which coal forms about 5,000 megawatt, right? So out of the overall 20,000 megawatt. And the private power plants, of course, you know, the large ones, Mundra, Tata, and Adani, these are huge UMPP plants, and therefore you have 6,000 megawatt. That's a lesser number of plants, but larger in size. And gas put together is another 2,000 megawatt. So overall, about 8,000 megawatt. And outside NTPC plants form about 4,000 megawatt. So that's a slightly lesser in number. So Gujarat has a total power base of about 20,000 megawatt capacity, of which 15,000 is coal. So significant amount, right? Next, please. So this is an interesting slide, which I thought puts things in perspective. The question is, of these in-state thermal plants, how old are they, right? So when we're talking about a coal transition, will this transition actually happen, yes or no? And here you can see in this graph, which I don't want to really go too much into detail, but you have 10 years, FY20 to FY30, and the age of the plant or the unit of that plant. So Gandhinagar Unit 3, for example, is 31 years as on today, as on FY20, I must add. And most of these PPAs go on for 40 years. So what you can see is the green bars are extinguishing themselves, you know, within the period of our analysis, and which is, as I said, by FY30. So a lot of the units, for example, Wanakbori Unit 1 to Wanakbori Unit 6, already will be 40 years within the time frame that we are considering for our analysis. So all we really need to do is to not renew the PPAs, the power purchase agreement of these power plants, and you will start seeing that energy transition happening automatically. And so if you can just click next, Rana. Yes. So can you please go back? There's a pull up. Yes. So 2,290 megawatts, so roughly 2,300 megawatt is already up for scheduled retirement. So one of the most obvious things that we need to do is not really renew the PPAs for these power plants. Take, for example, right in the center of that list, Ukai Unit 3, 4. They're already 42 years of age. So old polluting units, you don't really need to run them beyond 40 years of age. Next. So we did an analysis and said, based on these retirements, scheduled retirement, and of course, meeting the RE goals of 450 gigawatts announced by Prime Minister, what is the energy mix really going to look like? And here you can see, unfortunately, the legend is not being shown on the right side, but I'll take you through it. The gray bar that you see on the top is coal plus lignite. Now, coal plus lignite is rapidly reducing from more than about 72% to under 35% on energy terms by 2030. And you can see the orange bar, which is solar, going up to 28% and wind to 29%. So you will naturally have a wind and solar rich dominated energy mix by 2030. So that energy transition is already happening. We have peak coal. So that's something, I think, a very key message that we want. Next. What is the capacity share look like? In the last slide, we looked at the energy share and end use. But if you look at the capacity mix, if we meet the 450 gigawatt target, that's a very critical assumption, given the fact that the 175 gigawatt target will not be met by India in the next 1 year. So if we were to ramp up our renewable energy capacity, coal would only contribute to about 16.7%. Now that's staggering. That's a very bold claim to make, but we really just don't need that energy at all, given the fact that lion's share of it is going to come from solar and wind, as this graph shows, as this pie chart shows. Lignite and gas is a very small percentage in the overall capacity mix. Next. So really, to sum it up and then throw open the floor for discussions, what are we saying? We are saying, based on our models, we do not need new coal in Gujarat. So we just need to do nothing more. Just don't renew the old PPAs and don't build new power plants. Our demand can easily be met by the aggressive RE targets. And moreover, new coal is likely to be more expensive, including the fixed costs that we have to pay for the assets. Point C, muted demand growth, which not many people talk about, but we are seeing significant amount of consumers moving towards captive and open access, and which we call here sales migration. Large number of consumers are going towards sales migration. So DISCOMs will not be seeing historical demands of 5% plus year on year. And another interesting point is we have existing thermal capacity to manage the RE variability. So our models, we have 15-minute models that we've developed for Gujarat show that even if we do retire these plants, we really don't need, we really can manage variability with an existing thermal capacity. So in terms of what are the strategies to manage the transition, we really need to say no to thermal assets. I think the United Nations have said we will look at a larger no new coal globally, and I think Gujarat can be in a position to actually do this. Retire the plants that are up for scheduled retirement. Please do not renew the PPAs. Reconsider the FGD, environment norms-based installations for plants that are too old. Do we really need to install them if they're going to be retired in the next 10 years? Perhaps we shut them down anyway. Early retirement will be a thorny issue, right? The key question is who will bear the cost? Do we continue to pay, keep these power plants alive and continue to pay the fixed cost, or do we have a one-time package, retire them, decommission these plants? This is a larger question, and I think it's certainly political in nature. RE curtailment will be very real in Gujarat. Our models show that nearly 4 to 5% and up to 10% on a worst-case scenario of thermal capacity will be curtailed. So what kind of compensatory mechanisms need to be in place is something that we need to start planning for. But the key message is unlikely that we see any supply side constraint. We will have adequate capacity to meet the demand in Gujarat. So these are some of the broader messages that are coming out in trying to operationalize the no new coal message. I'll stop here and then perhaps take a few questions for discussion a little while later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akhilesh. And there was a lot in what you said, but even for the risk of oversimplification, we are looking at 63% of share coming from coal today, and that is going to 16% in your scenarios. That in and of itself, I think, speaks enormously on how coal will eventually languish, not just for climate reasons, for economic reasons, several other aspects where I think the governments will be forced to consider all of this sooner rather than later. And I'm saying this, that there is the global pressure on moving away from coal. And it feels like while India might feel that that pressure is unnecessary at some moment, there is a reverse pressure which is also building from the ground up, which is more driven by the rationale of economic competitiveness, environmental concerns, etc., which is paramount. We would come back to this after we've also had two other panelists share their views on their work. But thanks very much for fantastic presentation as always. And I see Mr. Deepak Kumar is also perhaps in the room. Sir, if you're around, can I invite you? Hi, nice to meet you. Would you be able to talk a little bit about just the work that you're doing on climate resilience in the state? We also know that you're thinking about long-term emission reduction pathways, something which in simple terms can be called the net zero for the state. How all that joins up, especially for a challenging state like Bihar. Do you have slides?
No, I don't have slides. I would just briefly speak about it. Ati, thank you very much. And I'm sorry for being late because I was in another webinar and I was chairing that session, so I could not leave that session.
No problem at all.
In between. So briefly speaking, as you have already pointed out, that Bihar has, we have started a work on developing a low carbon pathway by 2040. And we have started this work with the help of UNEP. And in another 2 years, we will be studying the current emission level as well as the current sink capacity which we have, and we will see as to how I will not say net zero, because unless we see the current emission level, perhaps we will not be able to say whether we will be able to make it net zero or not. But certainly by estimating the greenhouse gas emissions by different activities, we would then try or give all the policy suggestions, policy recommendations, which can be used for bringing down to the minimum possible level by 2040. Now, this MOU has been signed this year only in February, but on the building the climate resilience and countering the climate change, the work has been started by the government of Bihar long back. And Bihar, as you know, is primarily an agrarian economy. And there was an first agriculture roadmap, which was started in the year 2008. And the second agriculture roadmap, which was prepared in the year 2012, it made it very broad, including the other sectors also. And the third roadmap, which is currently going under implementation, is from 2019. So under this agricultural roadmap, greater importance was given primarily to two factors. Number one was about the afforestation. It was made a part of that. Now, unfortunately, Bihar, after the division of the state and separation of Jharkhand from the state, we have only around 7% of natural forest in Bihar as percentage of geographical area. So the only way we could have increased the green cover in Bihar was taking plantation aggressively outside the natural forest area. So we started several things like, of course, the things which are done normally in all the states by plantation along the common infrastructures like the railway lines and roads and embankments. That plus we also added, because that number is also, we can't achieve a very large number only by plantation across these roads and embankments. So we also gave too much emphasis on the agroforestry by giving proper incentives to the farmers so that they can plant trees also in their field, especially on the sides of the field, along with the other crops which they were taking. So from that perspective, we have done almost more than 30 crore plantation starting from 2012. And perhaps because it is not coming in the national data now, because there is one shortcoming, the national data, afforestation data still takes the list 3 figures. And the list 3 figure, the minimum mappable area is 1 hectare only. And the block plantations, they easily come under the list 3, but not the linear plantations. But we have done our survey separately by list 4 camera from FSI only, Forest Survey of India only. And we have found that there has been a substantial increase in the forest cover, in the green cover in Bihar. And we are continuing this afforestation drive also. The second important step which was taken was the Jal Jeevan Haryali Abhiyan, the Water, Life and Greenery Mission, if you can just translate it into English, although we use the word Jal Jeevan Haryali Abhiyan only. It was launched on 2nd October 2019 and initially for 3 years till 2022, and then it will be decided in what form it can be taken further. And under this Jal Jeevan Haryali Abhiyan, as the name itself suggests, the primary emphasis is on water conservation, increasing the area of the water bodies and preserving the water bodies, preserving the wetlands, as well as increasing the green cover. So this Jal Jeevan Haryali Abhiyan, which has been started from 2019, under that we have greatly increased our afforestation drive also. And now not only farmers, but we have taken it to the general public. The one large group which we involved was the self-help groups. The self-help groups, we have around 1 lakh of them here in number. and all the members of that group, them we involved in this, and we have given them separate saplings for planting in their own backyard, so that they can take care of that, because it also becomes very difficult task to take care of the plantations at the public land because of the increased biotic pressure. So that is another thing which we have done. And apart from that, the other things which has been done, like the single-use plastic, although the government of India announced just 2 months ago that the single-use plastics, certain items would be phased out by 2022. But we had taken steps much earlier, and in fact, before the central government announced the date, we had already announced that in Bihar, certain items made of single-use plastics will be phased out by December 2021. So we have a 6 months ahead of the schedule which the government of India has announced. Plus, now that we will be undertaking this study, so we will be undertaking this study, the making an inventarization of the greenhouse gas emissions from the brick kiln sector, from the transport sector, from the household sector. We have a certain idea because 3 of our cities are in the non-attainment cities, and we already had a study made of the studies, the source apportionment studies as to from where how much emission is coming, and we will further enlarge it to the whole state under the new MOU with the UNEP and the main sectors, because Bihar is not a very much industrialized states. So the most of the emissions come from the brick kilns, from the transport sector, from the domestic sectors, and some also from the thermal power plants also, and some industries, some large industries, because we don't have too many large industries here. So we will be taking stock of that greenhouse gas inventory, and accordingly we will devise the strategy as to how to bring it down to the lowest possible level. So this is briefly how we are trying to, and plus one important is towards the adaptation. These are all the mitigation factors. Towards adaptation, what we have done is that because Bihar is primarily an agrarian state, so we have undertaken the task of developing the climate resilient agriculture, and that model is also being tried so that the agriculture doesn't suffer under the ill effects of climate change. So briefly, Aarti, this was about what I had to say about Bihar. Thank you.
Thanks, very sir, and thanks for taking us through both the statewide what you're doing, but also just across a lot of sectors. And in the end, things will work differently for different states across the country. And that's one thing to also note, that how you plan to make Bihar reduce the emissions will come not so much from what will happen in Gujarat and Maharashtra. And you stressed about climate resilient agriculture, also the emphasis on afforestation, even your successful campaign like Jal Jeevan Haryali Abhiyan, and I think are really long-term ways on looking at a state which is not so industrialized, but still will have its own peculiarities in terms of where emission reduction can come from in significant ways. I'll come back on this, but for now, let's also move to Ladakh, and we have here Mr. Ravindra Kumar, who's the Secretary of the Power Development Department. Sir, you have a vision 2050, I believe, for the state, and there is also an understanding that across departments, there will be a way to integrate energy transition goals. The Union Territory anyway has one of the biggest plans for 10,000 megawatts of renewables, and I heard the Power Minister actually talk at a conclave a few days ago where he also spoke of the biggest battery production or the bids that will come up for that. So, extremely important developments happening on energy transition, and a lot will be, in the state, which will remain important from defense security point of view, to say it very openly. How does that whole thing connect in terms of the power transition goals that you're up for?
Good afternoon. I am thankful to Climate Group and other participants for giving me the opportunity to speak about the carbon neutral in Ladakh. So after the formation of Union Territory Ladakh, we have started a exercise to convert Ladakh into carbon neutral region within next few years. So initially, it was the vision of Honorable Lieutenant Governors. So we had a different meeting with the different stakeholders. And now we are having each department is working on carbon neutral plan. So each department is having a yearly action plan, and we are also having a 5-year action plan for the carbon neutrality. And that is being monitored by the Ministry of Power as well as the different department also. So in Ladakh, we have 90% electrification in household, but our areas are mainly remote areas. So we are getting power mainly through DG sets, which are actually diesel generator sets. So they are getting a lot of emission, and so also we are not giving them plenty power, and the quality is also very poor. So our main concern is to provide people a clean power and a reliable power for 24/7. So we have a discussion with the TERI as well as also ministry. We right now, whatever we use, carbon emission is actually 70% from the energy sector only. So that is our main problem. So we are focusing main on the energy sector. So right now we have planned a lot of project in the RE sector, and for the Ladakh region, I want to tell that we have potential of solar of 60 gigawatt as estimated, and wind, if we use 120 meter height of wind mass, then it's 100 gigawatts. So if we use less height of windmills, then it will be approximately 30 gigawatt of wind potential. So in order to decarbonize the whole Ladakh, we have planned a lot of activities, especially in energy sector and transport sector. So energy sector, we are right now looking of various initiatives, which I will discuss one by one. And in transport sector, we are going for EV vehicles as well as hydrogen vehicles. So that is also our plan. So after the formation of UT, we have started various projects. I want to highlight each of them in very brief. So we have started a work on 50 megawatt solar project at near Leh. So which will be meeting our winter demands mainly. We are dependent on winter through grid. So we are getting from that. As we all know that we have a good potential of geothermal also. So we have started work on geothermal energy project, and that will be first of in country of 1.25 megawatt in the start, and that will escalate up to 200 megawatt as per the research as per the research goals. So we have started this work, and this is in Puga area what we are doing. And geothermal is also very important for us because we are a high altitude area, and we have a large demand for space heating also. So that will also take care of our space heating need as well as the greenhouse for the winter vegetables also. So one project we are looking after now in Janskar with CSL, that will be a project because of Janskar is one of the coldest region in the Ladakh region. So we are right now having 10 DG sets in whole area. That is, and we are giving only 6 to 8 hours powers to people. And in winters we are very helpless kind of thing. So we have this project of 5 megawatt of solar project, and that will cater the demand, and that will replace the DG sets in the region. Another, the mega project that we are planning is 10 gigawatt solar plus wind hybrid projects. So that will be in Neoma and Pang area, and that will be actually supplying power to the rest of the country. So that is our plan, and the work is going on this project, and we are discussing the issues with the stakeholders and the different agencies. One project we are starting is the hydrogen-based mobility project. That will be 1.25 megawatt hydrogen project, and that will be green hydrogen project. We will generate power from the solar, and electrolyze the water and will produce hydrogen, and it will be also having fuel cells for the vehicles also. So we in initial stage, we are planning for 8 buses, and then we will scale it up as per our feasibility and requirements. We have started 2 transmission projects, one in Zanskar and one is Nubra region. So these 2 projects will be replacing about 30 DG sets of the region. So that will save our money as well as the emissions also will be reduced. In border area, in Durbuk and especially the Changthang region, which is mainly with the line of LSC. So that we are planning a separate transmission project and also standalone solar projects. So that will cater the need of the people in winters as well as the armed forces also. So that is also in under progress. For space heating, actually, our main problem is space heating, especially in winter and especially in high altitude areas. So space heating, we are looking for different options. Like one hydrogen, some decentralized plants we are planning in a pilot mode for 100 kilowatt or 200 kilowatt, that we are also planning. And also we are planning for some geothermal space heating project also. So that will also be very useful in the border areas. Another, we are working on space heating with different like solar passive heating and other issues, because right now we are using kerosene and diesel and other issues, and wood also for generating the heat. So we are changing our designs of the building, and we are also taking help of consultant for using the solar energy in, for the maximum use. So that we are also taking on priority. Apart from that, we also trying to reduce the LPG uses by the people so that emission can be reduced. So we are in process of giving people induction cook stove that will be used, that will be electricity based, and also home-based inverter battery solutions for the grid connected areas. So also we are planning for solar study lamps, so in the remote areas which are getting very less power. Apart from that, LED lights will be installed in place of other lights, and also energy management system in different regions in buildings. So that is our project that we have started in different regions, and our main actually in planning we have used all these things. So our action plan of state plan or any special development package, we are using solar passive technology, and we are focusing on carbon neutrality, because if every department will start working on these issues, then it will be easy for us to implement and achieve the goal. So we are committed for converting Ladakh a carbon neutral region, and we are committed for giving people a sustainable carbon free and clean energy 24/7, so that people can live easily, and we have some good economic activity. So these are from my Ladakh side. So I would be happy if any questions are from any participant or any queries. Thank you, madam.
Thanks very much, Mr. Kumar. I'm watching the time, and we have still about, I think we have 10 minutes, and I only wanted to replace reposition everything that you have said in a slightly bigger frame, because we are talking at the New York Climate Week. There is a lot of global attention on climate change. You mentioned the word carbon neutrality without, sometimes thinking about the quality of what net zero means. There is massive global interest and momentum to make announcements on having a mid-century net zero target. And, even if you look at the recent developments among the BRICS countries, we have mostly 2 countries who don't have a net zero target. Even if you look at how the climate negotiations happen, which happen through a group called BASICS, where you have Brazil, South Africa, India, and China. Even there, China and Brazil have announced their net zero targets. And it's mostly a case of a lot of good work that is happening across the states And then there is a massive implication to the economy if India were to take an economy-wide net zero target, which seems quite implausible at this moment. I don't want to put all the panelists on the spot. You can choose to ask the question, but I will ask this regardless and allow each one of you the opportunity to respond to it. I wanted to know from your perspective, how is the importance of an economy-wide zero emission mid-century target? How do you see that as fundamental to the goals that your state will achieve on transition? Or do you think that the transition is already underway and regardless, we will move in the right direction? In the end, a global meeting like the COP26 will focus a lot on national ambition and what's happening at the level of central governments and what their perspective is. But I think every stakeholder is pretty cognizant as well that there will be value in having action from subnational, and that is how it will aggregate upwards. In my just limited understanding, listening to experts like yourselves, it feels that subnational is important nowhere more than it is in a place like India. And that's why I'm just throwing this question to you. Feel free to just open the mic and answer. What do you think is the importance of having a net zero right now, as opposed to just going and progressing on actions which are being committed to and ramping them up?
Thank you, madam. I just want to reply that for Ladakh, it is very important because we are mainly a glacier region, and we have kind of a very large glacier here, and we are having various rivers emanating from these glaciers, like Indus River, like Siachen River, like Shyok River, like Suru River. So we, for us, it's very important to go for carbon neutrality because because of emission, we are having a problem of receding glacier, and streams are actually in decreasing volume. So for Ladakh, it is very important, and also we have very eco-fragile region also. So for tourism point of view also, we are in dire need of carbon neutrality, and that's why we are putting it in each department agenda, and we are focusing on targets, and we are hopeful that not 2050 we will be achieving carbon neutrality by before that in next 5 or 10 years. So we are planning in that direction only, and we will be achieving the target as I discussed with you. Thank you.
Fair enough, and I think which is rational for a lot of whoever in the world, the companies, just the impact that people are realizing on what climate change is bringing is not an impact into the distant future. That's an impact in the present. We did one little survey where we went and put a questionnaire to 400 small, medium, large companies, and almost 75% said that they realize both the physical and the reputational risk of climate. So I think what you're saying really speaks to that point of recognizing where the impact will take us and acting today. I see there is a question from Ramesh at Hindu Business Line, but I'll also allow Deepakji and Akhilesh to answer to my question of COP26 net zero. Is that super important to have it first, or it's just important to go ahead with the work that's happening?
Akhilesh, if you would like to say first.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Aarti, I think it's critical. We need to do it irrespective of whether there's an formal announcement or not. I typically like to think of any effort in two ways. One is the bottom-up approach, and the other is the top-down approach. The advantage of top-down approach is, with one announcement, you have the entire alignment. In India, we have seen examples of this work. I think Ravindra Kumarji was talking about the LED bulbs. For example, Ujala has been quite a good example of how a top-down approach can work, or even the National Solar Mission. But the challenge with that is you get into all these kinds of political and bureaucratic log jams. And so they are indeed something that is not easy to sort out, especially in a federal republic like India. And I think that's where bottom-up approaches from various states, even going further down, city-wide state action plans, district-wise state action plans. What Climate Group is doing with the RE100, I think, is a great example of that. Getting companies on board, getting industries on board to decarbonize is, I think, the way to go towards that net zero ambition. And if you see, we've already I mean, globally, we've won the battle. The energy production, so that is electricity production in India contributes to 40% of emissions. Renewable today, solar and wind are already cheaper. And so it's really an issue of integration. We won that battle. Transport, especially in terms of two-wheeler electric vehicles, is something we've already won. I think that we've already passed the tipping point. Where we really need to focus on is industrial production. I think it is known as the IPPU category, and agriculture. Not much is being done here, also because it's not very, it's not very trendy to talk about decarbonizing agricultural sector. But I think that's very important. And so, if we can start looking at it sector-wise and use this bottom-up approach to complement top-down approaches, net zero is something that we should easily hit by mid-century. It shouldn't be too difficult, too difficult a problem.
Yeah, Arti, I think, see, the net zero by 2050 or by 2040, I mean, these targets, of course, there should be a target, as Akhilesh said, that they help in aligning the policies when there is a top-down approach. But you see, the main thing which I feel the issue is that still the climate change is still, it is thought of as something which is related to a particular department in the government. This thing has to come to the mainstream of policy making in all the departments. Now, what happens? See, there are two things. When there is, say, for example, when we celebrate the World Environment Day or the World Ozone Day, then all the departments, they will celebrate it, they will talk about it, and then the next day when they are doing their normal work, they will forget about it. The second thing is that we started these discussions, I mean, long back in 1980s at the international level, starting from the main Earth Summit of 1992. Every time we keep on the goalpost, we keep on pushing it further and further and further. See, the environmental, another thing which is very convenient for the departments other than the Environment and Forest Department is something which is called mitigation. So the mitigation gives them a license to do whatever they want to do and then put up a policy which will mitigate the damage done by them. My point of view is that why to do something when we have to mitigate that damage? You have to find out a way in which the damage is not done in the first place. So that thing has to come in the mainstream. When we are talking about the roads, then we forget about how many trees are cut, how biodiversity is lost, whether it will go through a tiger reserve, whether it will go through a serene jungle. When we talk about mining, then we forget about it. We say that development is necessary. At the same time, when there will be some kind of a mitigation plan, the nature can't be recreated. So the most important thing is, see, this 2050 target or 2040 target, these things are immaterial unless we actually bring the environmental concerns into the mainstream of policy making of all the departments. And the main important thing is, you see, ideally, broadly speaking, there are only two things. If whether you want to make it low carbon, whether you want to make it carbon neutral, you want to make it net zero, number one thing is to increase your sink capacity, and number two is to bring down your total emission. Now, if the whole policies and the whole activities of all the departments of all the sectors are geared towards that, we will certainly achieve it. The time factor doesn't matter. We have already lost so much of time. The environmental concerns came into prominence sometime around 1950, 1960 only. We have already lost 70 years. So 5 years or 10 years doesn't matter. But this thing is important. Thank you.
I'll ask a top-up question maybe while you have the mic, because you made an important point about mainstreaming and looking at cross-functional and not limiting it to climate. Note we started on as well. So, for example, in Bihar, sir, can you talk a little bit on how you will fund these initiatives, or is there a plan on what part of funding will be public, where will it be private? Because in the end, departments will also consider when money is on the table, and the rest of it, like you said, is celebratory about Ozone Day and Environment Day. So how do we make sure that there is actual budgeting, which will also lead to accountability? Is that the direction in which Bihar is thinking about the plan? You can keep it short because I just wanted to ask quickly and then
see about the budget part. We have not actually calculated the whole amount of budget which will be needed for that. Once we make our comprehensive policy recommendation, because currently some sectors it has been done. For example, brick kiln sector, which emits about 6% of the total emission, that we have taken care of by converting it into the zigzag technology, so which brings down emissions to 30%. And then further to that, we are promoting the fly ash. So similarly, the transport sector, they have already started the work of moving to cleaner fuel, as well as to electric buses and all that, and CNG buses. Similarly, the domestic sector also, the work has started for converting it into the piped gases. So these works have started, but we have not actually calculated the whole amount which will be needed in the total budget for the entire state. But as I told, it is not actually simply a matter of budget. It is more a matter of thinking, and it is more a matter of attitude. I don't want to go into the details. I can speak hours on this point as to why the attitude is matters. It is not the money. It is not because the amount as it is, we are doing it. The only thing is that we have to spend it in a responsible manner. That's all.
Fair enough, and thanks very much. Sorry, I just lost track of the chat, and I think we've answered the question on carbon markets. There is a question on if you can talk about the energy mix by 2030 for Bihar and Ladakh.
Actually, sorry, I will not be able to speak on that because I don't have that
problem.
data.
Mr. Kumar, I think you alluded to some of it, and is there any rough indication that you can give on how the energy mix will look different between now and the next 7-8 years?
Right now, madam, we have maximum energy coming from the hydropower mainly. So by 2030, we are expecting a demand of approximately 150 megawatt, and that will be kind of 30% from the hydro and 70% from the RE sources. So mainly RE will be mainly wind or solar mainly. So that is our main plan. Hydrogen we are not sure because hydrogen actually in mainly research stage only. So that will depend upon the research what is comes and what will be the cost to us. And so our main emphasis is on mainly solar and wind right now, and geothermal to some extent it will be seen after 1 or 2 years. So right now we are planning 150 megawatt and 30% from the hydro and 70% from the RE sector. That is all.
Right, and the moment has come to wrap up as well. But if I just take very simply, at least the intention from what all three of you said, certainly it feels like the states are committed about figuring out what works for them, both economically as well as environmentally. The question really is, there are certain things which are not clear to us at the moment. For example, you said hydrogen, it will have its normal course and that technology will take time, and that's when the fuller picture will come. Akhilesh, I think somewhere in the middle, you talked about industrial coal, and if there is not an alternative, you don't know how that little share will come from. But otherwise, at least the optimism that you spoke about net zero on, and the fact that it's not just mid-century, maybe both, it will be an opportunity as well as it will be in our own interest to do it much before that. And if I have any confidence in how you showed the coal numbers and how we've been talking to you since a couple of years, and you've literally made that happen, I think net zero is a good sign, and we should see it coming sooner rather than later. And that's the writing on the wall. The question just is how, like you said, the matching up of the top down and the bottom up. And maybe at this moment I will pause. I'll hand it back to you, Rana, and the Climate Group team, but not before thanking each one of you, Akhilesh, Deepakji, and Mr. Ravindra Kumar. Thanks very much for joining and for stressing on the good work across the states and how it's adding up to the ambition that India is ready to show. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Aarti. And yes, thanks a lot again, Ravinder sir, Deepak sir, and Akhilesh for such a wonderful discussion. I would just like to request you to stay for a few more minutes because we have one last speaker with us. I would like to invite Mautushi Sengupta. Mautushi is the director of India office at MacArthur Foundation. As we all know, MacArthur Foundation has been at the forefront when it comes to supporting activities of projects with respect to subnational climate actions in India, in this region as well. So, Mautushi, very warm welcome to you. Mautushi, very quickly, just would like to understand from you, like from a funder's perspective, from a leading funder's perspective in India and this region, how important is it now to scale up subnational climate actions? 2021, as we all know, is a very important year, and we have been, like science have been giving us repeated alarms and alerts. So how important is it now to support subnational climate actions in India and scale up the activities that we do at the subnational region, particularly when it comes to India or the global south? So over to you, Mautushi. You're on mute now.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to thank you very much, Rana. I just wanted to say that I was really enjoying the conversation which was moving forward just before this. And in many ways, my comments would actually be a little bit of a departure from the panel discussion which took place. So I just wanted to sort of highlight the importance of the role that the states play in terms of enabling India achieve its climate goals from a funder's perspective. So before we start, I just wanted to say that, we've been present in the country since 1995. Globally, we are one of the older foundations, private foundations, who have been supporting development initiatives across different countries, largely in the US, but also across different countries as such, for over last 40 years. And since 1995, India, the foundation has maintained a physical presence in India, and we have focused on a whole range of themes. And during this period from 1995 to today, as I speak here. So when we talk about climate, it's part of the big bet that MacArthur has taken with respect to reducing emissions and keeping the temperature rise to less than 2 degrees Celsius. And so this was identified in 2014. And this is, in fact, probably the foundation's largest philanthropic initiative at this point in time. And the India portfolio is an important part of this big bet. Since 2015 to date, we have made grants to civil society organizations and nonprofits of more than 50 million. And we expect to stay engaged as we move forward, trying to look at ways by which we can support the use of renewable energy and also encouraging the adoption of clean technology in the country. And so with that at the background, I just wanted to say that, last year, MacArthur went through a fairly in-depth review of its climate program strategy. And last year marked the 5th year of the big bet. And in some ways, it was a moment to take a pause and reflect on where we had reached with our grant making to civil society organizations, and also acknowledge the type of changes that were evident in the field, and look forward to identifying the key drivers that needed redressing as we move forward. As a result of the review as such, we came out with a much stronger commitment to climate change as a big bet. And we think that, it's an important area that we would like to stay engaged with. And in many ways, our ideas has been, supported by the several reports which have been published in the recent years. And importance of addressing climate change is probably just growing by the day. So where we emerged as far as the strategy refresh was concerned, was to say that, we would look at supporting India achieve its domestic ambitions. So as opposed to international ambitions as such. So moving the needle from looking at supporting India from in achieving its international commitments, where we want to go forward as we move forward, is to enable India and its domestic actors, including the states, to achieve their ambitions or the targets that they have set. So when I hear of the examples that that were discussed in the last panel, it really warms my heart to say that we are in the right direction, and going forward we think that the states are going to play a very, very important role in helping India achieve its climate goals as a whole. So going forward, our grant making strategy is going to be of looking at providing a much stronger level of support to civil society organizations which are located in the states. And also we would like to see how this transition to clean energy can happen in a more equitable fashion. So these are important changes which took place as part of the strategy review. And though it's still less than a year since the review was completed, we feel that we are in the right direction with this one. It marks the important role that the states are likely to play in achieving the targets. It's also an acknowledgement to the a much deeper level of understanding of what needs to be done. The next stage of or next set of constraints that need to be addressed if we want to achieve these achieve the climate goals as such. And as I speak, the foundation is currently in the middle of the study. We have just recently supported a very well-known think tank to help us identify the partner states as such. So we are looking forward to identifying 3 to 5 focus states going forward. We are still in that process, so I can't really name those states, but trying to look at specific states where we would like to deepen our engagement much more as such, and also create ecosystem of actors and civil society organizations in those states which can support the state governments achieve higher goals. So just to conclude that, I would like to say that this is really, really an important element of our strategy, of our engagement in the country. And going forward, we would like to see much more happen at the state level than we have seen in the past. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Motushi, for such an interesting intervention. I mean, as you rightly said, I think deepening of activities at the state level and having more like working closely with the state level CSOs will be a game changer going forward. Thanks a lot for your time today, Motushi, and I think we are just on time. Just would like to thank everybody who were able to join us today, and especially our speakers, Ravinder sir, Deepak sir, and Akhilesh. It was really wonderful to hear from all the three of you, from particularly when it comes to the importance of state level activities that you all are leading in your respective states. I think it was really wonderful to hear from you. I think 45 minutes was really too less to hear from such interesting work that you're doing in your own jurisdictions too. So we'd just like to thank you all again for joining us. Aarti, thanks a lot for moderating the session so well. And once again, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to having you in our future events. Till then, take good care of yourself and have a very good weekend. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.